Hello, I'm Kirby Franze, and I will be discussing Mike Pence and Kamala Harris's vice president acceptance speeches. To begin with Pence, his imagery was very similar to that during Trump's presidential acceptance speech. There was a lot of flags, lots of people in attendance. He begins by talking about heroes, wars won, liberty and the American flag, and discusses how they have defined our nation. He first attacks on the Democrats, wherein he explains that nothing of patriotism has been mentioned by the left recently. They've merely been attacking America. Chapter 2 discusses how the introduction of television as of where party-based, with the introduction of television as of where party-based campaigns, meaning campaigns were based on the party ideals, now they are candidate-based. This is a prime example of this in Pence's speech as he begins describing Trump as the person who wants to help and protect America because he believes in it, as of where the same can't be said about Biden, according to Pence. He is playing up Trump as a candidate and less on their campaign itself. This trend continues as his speech goes on. However, he does touch heavily on their platform basis, which fundamentally has God, guns, and country at its core. He says the left's agenda is on government control while Trump's is based on freedom, showcasing Pence and Trump's patriotic campaign mantra. Pence touches the heart when he talks about and addresses his family one by one, ending with his mother, tying into the concept of pandering to family values, as we also discuss in the text. By having in attendance many former and current military members, he not only shows the patriotism that backs the Trump campaign, but forms camaraderie amongst many Americans who back the military and hold American ideals of military economy and religious freedom close to their hearts. He touches on all of these subjects and the positive things Trump has done. 15 minutes in, he begins to discuss COVID-19. He begins speaking on what he considers Trump's extraordinary response to COVID, and this resembles issue ownership as discussed in Chapter 6. While many news stations claim that Trump has not been owning the COVID situation, Pence discusses it thoroughly. No one was denied a ventilator, he claims. He says that they also mourn with those who have lost loved ones, really taking on the COVID situation. According to NPR, the vice president decried violence and chaos in the streets of our major cities and rejected assertions of systemic racism and police bias against minorities, while falsely claiming Biden supports campaigns to defund the police. Because what Biden actually said when he said yes, absolutely, was not to defunding the police, but to rearranging police funding and reallocating funds to mental health education. Last week, Joe Biden said, "No miracle is coming." What Joe doesn't seem to understand, Pence said, is that America is a nation of miracles, which really hits home Pence's Christian faith and the many times he appealed to the average American middle class Christian voter, who I feel like they oftentimes are pandering to. NPR also points out, as the COVID-19 task force handler, Pence had around 150 people in attendance, and pretty much none of them were wearing masks. Moving on to Kamala Harris. Kamala's platform is strikingly similar to Biden's in her imagery. It was very toned down with no in-person crowd. It was all virtual. There was only reporters there, and they were very spaced out. It seemed like way more than the 6 feet CDC recommended. She immediately started off by discussing Black history and female strides throughout history, paving the way for her to be where she is and for others before her, comparing herself to some very noteworthy politicians such as Obama and Hillary Clinton. She spends a lengthy amount of time right off the bat discussing her heritage and family. However, she does not have any of her family there in attendance, as of where in comparison to Pence, who had his entire family there, which I found a little bit odd because even the CDC says it's okay to be around family from the same household. She did note, though, that her daughter, that she couldn't be in attendance for an important event for her daughter, so that is obviously why one of her family members wasn't there. That doesn't really explain why the rest of them were not. Her platform is for the people and discusses how she has been an advocate for the sexually abused and the downtrodden. She states she shares Biden's vision of living in a united America where it doesn't matter who you love, which to me she was speaking to the LGBTQ community, who the Democrats often try to appeal to. She explains the vision of a united America has faded because of Donald Trump and his leadership. It's at this point in the speech where she begins politically attacking Trump. She discusses how America is grieving during the pandemic due to losing jobs and life, but that the minority community is suffering the most. She then blames this on systemic racism and then ties that into police discrimination. This is when she says something that's become very notable from her speech. There is no vaccine for racism. She mentions George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, as of where Pence did not mention these names during his speech at all, presumably to prevent media feeding frenzies, as it would have most likely caused if Trump had mentioned that, as we also discussed in Chapter 6. She goes on to discuss how Biden is to thank for the assault weapons ban, which it can be confidently assumed that many Second Amendment loving Americans did not like this reminder and don't like that Biden did that. She said that Trump turns tragedies into political weapons. She then says that Biden will bring back jobs, as of where Pence claims he will cause Americans to lose jobs to China. And he will get a grip on COVID and make sure America is ready for the next pandemic. That seemed a bit odd to me by just kind of saying for the next pandemic. That was an odd choice of words to me. She seemingly addresses the rioting by saying it's about us, people of all ages and colors and creeds, who are, yes, taking to the streets and also persuading our family members, rallying our friends, organizing our neighbors, and getting out the vote. To me, this was her kind of downplaying the extreme violence that's being perpetrated in major cities across America. When she says, years from now, the moment will have passed and our children, our grandchildren will look into our eyes and ask us, where were you when the stakes were so high? They'll ask, what was it like? And we'll tell them not just how we felt, we will tell them what we did. To me, it seems she is saying by getting out and protesting, you are doing something that you can later on tell your grandchildren, because I don't think you would just be telling your grandchildren that you went and voted. So I don't think that's really what she was meaning by that, but that's up to interpretation. An article from the National Review claims Harris bent the truth on facts about COVID, also about the fact that Trump isn't at fault for children not being able to go back to school because the federal government does not run schools, and the president has urged schools to reopen. Some of the largest school unions in the country are threatening to strike if teachers are forced to return to school. This could be why Pence worded the handling of kids going back to school so eloquently, because he knew most of his followers want their kids to go back to school, but also knows that it really isn't in their control. That concludes my video. Thank you so much for your time, and have a good day.